This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com and constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. My name is Todd DeWalt, and it's my job to help you, the construction business owner and leader, eliminate chaos and maximize profits in your business. Let me ask you a question. What if you could create your own economic stimulus package? What if you could, think about this, think about the last time you found like a $20 bill in a pair of jeans, or reached into your truck console and found $20. What if you could find thousands of dollars for your business? What if you could create your own economic stimulus package? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today with Jeff Heet. He's back on the podcast. He is an insurance agent, and he's an expert in all things workers' comp related. And we're going to talk about what you can do to create cash and get a refund potentially from your workers' comp policy and your general liability policy. We're also going to talk about the financial upside for developing a training program, some questions that you need to be asking your accountant. We'll answer the question, what is a midterm audit of your liability policy and why right now is a really good time to do one, the impact of COVID-19 on your workers' comp policy, and the upside of putting in place a good timesheet tracking system. Having a system like Tsheets, which you can find more details at constructionleadingedge.com/Tsheets. Having a system like that could give you a 10x return on investment. So great stuff. You're going to want to listen to this if you like the idea of creating cash and getting money back. Before we get into that interview, I do have a couple of resources that I want to share with you. If you manage a project or a crew on a construction site, you know how important timely, clear communication is to keep your team safe and keep your projects on track. Over the years, many have turned to text messaging as a way to communicate with their teams and their subs. It gets information across quickly, and it's easy to use because everyone knows how to text. But these messages aren't stored in one place, and they're hard to manage and stay on top of. And because messages and pictures aren't saved, they're not organized, and they're not searchable, it makes it almost impossible to refer back to those conversations later in the event of a dispute. Well, there's good news, though. I recently discovered an app called Field Chat. Field Chat is a messaging app purpose-built for construction teams. It alleviates what I like to call the Bermuda Triangle of information between the field, the office, and the client. With Field Chat, all of your conversations on a job site happen in one place. Project managers can organize foremen, superintendents, and subcontractors by channels and start messaging using the mobile app or text. It also integrates with text messaging, so it's easy to include anyone in a conversation, whether it's someone on your own team that refuses to learn technology or a trade partner or a sub that just prefers to keep text messaging rather than downloading something new. Where was Field Chat when I ran my construction business? I needed a tool like this to keep our operations running smoothly. Instead of all the fragmented conversations that left important people out and commitments that were made that I could no longer find proof of. Here's what this tool means to you. More time, better documentation, less mistakes, and simplified dispute resolution. Field Chat is offering you, the Construction Leading Edge podcast listener, 15% off your subscription. Just go to fieldchat.com/edge. You can start your free trial right now and see how it feels to have communications that free up more of your time. Go to fieldchat.com/edge. Have you ever wondered how the big, successful contractors do it? How do they grow consistently? Why don't they have cash flow issues? What are they doing that you're not? Well, I've put together a free video series that I want to get in your hands that has helped hundreds of people. It's called The Secrets of Successful Contractors. Here's what you're going to get when you sign up for this free video series. You're going to learn about some of the strategies that big contractors use that you may not know about. You'll find out how the big contractors grow their business without hiring more people. You'll learn how you can boost your profits without chasing down new customers. And you'll find out, if nothing else, if there's only one thing you get from this video series that's worth the time, it's the hidden costs that could be killing your bottom line that you don't even know about. So if you want to get your hands on this free video series, all you need to do is go to constructionbusinessaccelerator.com/secrets, and you'll get instant access to your free video series. All All right, now let's get to that interview with Jeff Heet and learn how you can create your own economic stimulus package. Enjoy. All right, Jeff, thanks for being on the podcast again. How's it going today?
Pretty good, Todd. Thanks for having me back again.
Absolutely. Got a lot of good feedback from the last episode, the first episode you were on previously, talking about some of the topics that we'll go into further depth on today. But here's where I want to start. Here we are recording this in the end of April 2020. There is, if you're listening to this in the future, there's the coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic, lots of uncertainty about the future, federal stimulus money going around. People are making big decisions. Construction businesses are shut down or facing air bubbles in their pipeline. And here's where I want to start. I have seen and heard that there's an opportunity to create, in essence, your own stimulus package in the form of getting a refund from payments that you've made in the past for insurance policies, whether it's general liability, workers' comp, etc. Can you validate? Is that true? And if so, what should people be doing right now?
Yeah, so that is correct, Todd. There are ways to go back and look at audits and fix errors because whether you're with the NCCI or the Workers' Comp Insurance Rating Bureau in those states, they get the data, and that data that they receive on the payrolls, class codes, all that stuff is what they submit in to come up with what the premium is. So if the data they receive is wrong, your premium could be much higher than what it should be. And I know with like our company, when we do this, and then there's other companies that would do this, typically if they find errors that are in your favor, we're not going to say, hey, you should be paying more. But if there are errors where you should be getting some money back, one big one is payrolls. Maybe they submitted in that your payroll was only $1 million over the last year, but your actual payroll is $2 million. So when you have a $2 million payroll, that goes into your loss history. You have your claims based off of $2 million in payroll compared to $1 million in payroll. Your experience mod's going to go down substantially from what it was reported with that $1 million in payroll. So that's a big one, is looking at the payrolls. You could look at, there's some different wage caps on owners too. Say you have some minority owners that are included on the policies. One good example is with lawyers. So lawyers have a wage cap of $140,000, but many lawyers in the larger firms might make $1 million a year. So they're getting charged on that full $1 million on their workers' comp instead of capping it at 140 if their broker didn't know to cap that or they didn't catch that error. So just going back and reviewing for those errors is a good way to make sure you've been charged correctly, find ways to get some money back, and to make sure it doesn't happen in the future.
Speaking of going back, how far back can you go? Is there some sort of statute of limitations on that?
Typically, when we do a review, it's going to be 2 to 3 years in the past, up to 3 years. So it's going to be reviewing your last 3 years that are impacting your experience mod, and that could be different, varied by state too. So states can be different on that. But in most cases, it's 2 to 3 years. And like one example I had with a client on the other side, looking at their class codes, they had reached out to me because on their workers' comp, they're a general contractor. And they thought they were paying a lot. And by looking at their codes, most of their employees were in carpentry or clerical, but they had a lot of other employees that were doing drywall, tile work, masonry, hanging doors. So lots of different class codes that should have been on there that have a lot lower rate than carpentry, which could be $30 per 100 in payroll, for example. So now we're putting them into these lower class codes that might have a $5, $10 per 100 rate. And just by updating their class codes, getting a roster of all their employees, job description, making sure that they track that correctly, whether they're using Tsheets or another tracking device on the hours of work, we're able to save them. They're paying around $300 all the way down to $150,000 for their workers' comp. Same payroll, same exposure, just paying half the price.
That would be a nice little economic stimulus to get a check back.
Yeah.
And to cut, that's a great move going forward, is we're one of the things I'm telling people right now is you need to optimize your overhead. And maybe 6 months ago, you weren't so concerned about it because things were rolling. But now's a really good time to optimize overhead. And I want to talk about some of the things people can do in that along those lines going forward. But let's talk about class codes. What are some of the highest class codes, the most expensive class codes when it comes to workers' comp?
Well, carpentry is always going to be very high. And
Why
they
is
like
that? Is that because of do they? What would be included in carpentry, and then why is that so high?
carpentry. A lot of times they're going to try to put your laborers in there that aren't doing specific work. Because usually, if they're lower paid, their laborers, there's a higher percentage of them getting hurt or putting in claims. People that are doing the framing work that could fall into the carpentry. So just higher exposure. So in the way that these rating bureaus work and these carriers work is, of course, if you're not specific, if you're not tracking it and they don't know what class code it goes in and they don't have details that say they should be in drywall instead of carpentry, they're going to default to the highest rated class code because they don't know how to properly cover the exposure. So that's where I really think, and it's not really the the general contractors out there, these business owners of construction companies, it's not their job to know what class codes their employees should go into. They just need to be providing the right details on what their employees are doing to their insurance broker, and their insurance brokers need to be able to work and find the right class codes so it's benefiting them and not getting charged more. So they definitely need to be looking at that closely, because you don't want a broker just putting in you in higher class codes because they know you don't know any better too. So you got to watch that.
So, do insurance brokers make a commission on workers' comp insurance policies?
They do. So typically, this could be different per agency. Some could charge broker fees. And typically, it's around 8 to 12% is what the commission is. Some carriers might pay more. Depending on how much business your agency does with them, you might get more commission than you get with another carrier. So that's another thing to look at, is how transparent are they being with their quotes? Are you seeing what the commissions are? Are they whiten those out so you can't even tell what the commission is? Because you don't want them pushing you on one quote that's 20 grand more just because they get 2% more commission than the other quote.
Yeah, and you talked quite a bit about some of the questions you should ask and some of the behind the scenes stuff with workers' comp on the first time you were on the podcast, which was episode number, I'm scrolling through this right now, episode 129. So if you want to do a deep dive on workers' comp and find out some of the questions you should be asking your agent, then go listen to episode 129. Okay, so that's interesting. Go ahead.
Real quick, Todd. I think the main thing with insurance is you need to trust your broker. If you don't have that relationship where you look at them as a friend or someone that you can trust to do what's right for your business, it's a good time to go out, interview 2, 3, 4 brokers and find that one person that you think can do the best job for your company, because it can make a huge impact.
Yeah, and that's something I see a lot is, well, they're my guy, they're my insurance guy, and they have been for the last 20 years, or they were dad's homeowner's insurance guy growing up, so that's how I got my business and auto and everything through. And maybe so that might be the best deal, but it's really in your best interest to take it out to the market and find out, compare them against other people, and do what's best for your business. Maybe
into it than just getting the best quote.
That
providing, because it might have been the best price out of the information provided, but if they weren't providing the right information, you could have still been way overpaid.
Yeah, probably something I was guilty of a long time ago was I just needed, quote, insurance. And I thought if I just told my agent, hey, set me up, I need insurance, they would ask me a couple of questions about deductibles and that sort of thing. And I thought I'd check the box. But there are a lot of nuances, and your insurance broker should be asking you a lot of questions in order to give you, quote, insurance. and it gets you what you need.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other, so carpentry, we got a lot of people from all over, all sorts of trades and disciplines who listen to this podcast. Site work, there's probably some excavation contractors, utility contractors, roofers, concrete, all the way down to, well, every part of the spectrum. So what are some of the other higher, let's put it this way, what are some of the um, class codes that people have their employees lumped into most often when they should be at a lower class code? You mentioned carpentry. Is there another class code that you see people getting lumped into a lot and they could be something else lower?
Another one I see a lot is with roofing. They might be doing roofing and solar, and they'll just lump everybody into the roofing class code when solar's a lot less of a rate, probably like a fourth the rate around there, depending on the state. But roofing is a big one where they always get lumped into that class code. So if you're doing roofing and solar, or if you got guys that are not going on the roof and they're down below, they should be in a different class code. So you need to really look at, what exactly is the duty of each employee, not just what industry are you working in. Another one's like tree trimming. I have clients that, they have guys that go up in a tree. We had one last year, an audit, where it was one that was just a new client of ours, so it wasn't our policy being audited, it was a prior policy that we helped them dispute the audit because they were being charged $50,000 more than they should have been because they were lumping everybody into tree trimmer, which they only had a couple guys that actually climbed up in the tree. The rest of the guys were on the ground doing landscaping, sprinklers, so they were supposed to go into the landscaping class code. So we got that updated and got that $50,000 audit removed and got them $10,000 back actually on top of it. So it's about $60,000 swing. So it's just a matter of really tracking what are your employees are doing, and having a good tracking sheet, like you've mentioned many times with Tsheets, really helps out because you might have a guy that's doing 4 hours of one job and then 4 hours of another. That's a completely different class code. And that's where getting all that information to your broker, this is what our employees do, so we can get all the right class codes on the policy. Because if the broker's not asking enough questions to know what class codes go on the policy, then the carriers are never going to know if the right class codes are not either.
So here's the question I'm thinking in my mind. How does one go about correlating workers' comp class codes to, let's say they have a system like Tsheets, to their cost codes or their payroll items, or however that works from an accounting standpoint? Can there be a relationship where you could set it up and say that my O200 concrete laborer is this specific workers' comp class code? Is that how you would do that?
I don't know all the details with Tsheets, how that works, how they classify it inside their system, but I would assume that they put it in for class codes for the employees, so they're clocking into the class code that they go into. I know on the workers' comp side, whenever they're doing their payroll reports, which I recommend, especially now, it's been huge, is be on the payroll reporting or pay as you go, so you're not paying just an estimated payroll per month. So like right now, if you don't have any work, you're not paying any workers' comp. So if you're on that formula, all those class codes are listed, and then you just take off whatever they were in Tsheets or your payroll system. Your payroll provider should be providing them, hey, here's our workers' comp policy, here's our class codes, this is what the employees are going into. So that can be transferred directly over to the insurance carrier to the payroll reporting sheet.
Gotcha. So we've talked about Tsheets a couple of times. Tsheets is a time tracking software, virtual time card system. I used it 8 years ago, started using it, revolutionized the company that I was running at the time. Can't say enough good things about it. So if you're curious about it, you can go to constructionleadingedge.com/Tsheets, Tsheets. Check it out. It's my number one. It's my go-to.
I'm not an expert on Tsheets, but my understanding is it does link up with most payroll providers.
Yeah, it's actually owned by Intuit. Therefore, it syncs up nicely with QuickBooks, and then I think it also integrates with quite a few others. But it's been around a long time, and it's pretty robust. timesheets, scheduling, and it's got a few other capabilities as well. But it's not like a project management system. It's for managing hourly employees, time tracking, scheduling, maybe a few other things. But definitely, I've heard people say there's one roofing contractor in Michigan I know. His name is Andy. He said, I saved $10,000 a year on workers' comp because I had a time tracking system. And he's got a relatively small operation. So it's money well spent. If you have hourly employees and you don't have a good time tracking system like this, I would hit pause right now on this podcast, come back to it later, and then go find some sort of system, get it in place, because it's going to pay for itself over and over and over.
Yeah, that's the key, because if you don't have that set up, whenever you go to audit, now you want to say, "Oh, I'm in the wrong class codes." It's a nightmare trying to fix it because we don't really have the proof to provide.
Yes. Yeah, it's really hard to go back and recreate documentation that would survive an audit, definitely. Yeah. All right, let's talk about going forward. We've talked about workers' comp, going back and potentially reviewing audits, maybe even being due a refund. Let's talk about going forward now. Well, actually, before we get to what to do going forward, let's talk about what people should be doing right now. Here we are, hopefully on the downhill slope of the coronavirus pandemic. But what should people be doing right now when it comes to tracking their changes and expenses on their financials as it relates to the coronavirus pandemic?
Okay. So there's actually a lot of things they could be doing and that could help out their cash flow. First thing is, I would talk to your accountant or your bookkeeper, whoever you're working with, and let them know that you need to add a COVID-19 a line item on your financials. Start tracking all your expenses. If you have job duties changing, track that. One of our employees that used to work in the field is now working clerical from home. That should be tracked because the different workers' comp bureaus are making exceptions where if you have employees changing class codes, usually 8810 cannot be split if they're either clerical or they're not. But now they're making exceptions on that. So if you have that tracked, you could be saving substantial money because clerical class code can be 50 cents or less compared to $10, $20 class codes that are out in the field. Another thing is looking at your financials. Say you were projected to do 10 million in revenue and your renewal's coming up here in the next couple months and you're only at 5 million in revenue. You can go back to your insurance carrier and show them your financials and say, hey, we're doing 5 million. We're probably not going to do much more for the rest of the year. Let's do a midterm so-called audit right now off our financials. Say you're paying 100,000 for that 10 million in revenue, get $50,000 in premium back because now you only did 5 million in revenue. And then an audit, it'll pick up any overages over that 5 million. So then you can just pay that little bit then. So that's a good way to get money back in your pocket. We just did that with a client of ours, a long-term client, and we got them $70,000 back in their pocket. And it paid off their remaining payments on their policy, and it paid off some of their other policies that they had payments due on. So that was a way to help them out since they're completely shut down right now. If you're slow, that's another way to look at it too. If you're slow, have it looked at. Maybe you're only down 10, 20%, but that 10, 20% could help you out right now. Other ones are some of the things to pay attention to is with COVID-19 on workers' comp. If you have employees that get sick, those will most likely be covered by workers' comp claims is what the states are working on. It's not guaranteed yet, but that's a bill that they're trying to pass. But those won't impact your experience mod, which is a good thing. Trying to think there's so many different ways that they can be proactive right now. If you have like umbrella policies or another one, typically your umbrella is rated off your general liability rates.
We mentioned here we are hopefully in the middle or toward the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. What's going to be the impact of COVID-19 on workers' comp, and what should construction business owners be looking at right now as it pertains to that subject?
Well, if they've had any changes in operations, they need to be tracking that on their, keeping track of those expenses. Big one is if you have employees that were working in the field, whether it's roofing or contracting, now that they are, say, they're sitting at home working on the computer, doing some paperwork, now they should be put in the 8810 clerical class code. So you need to track that because the Workers' Comp Insurance Rating Bureau and the NCCI are both approving a new legislature that will change that your employees can now be put into 8810 class code that typically weren't in the past. So that's just a matter of talking to your broker about that and discussing those details. But that if they're now working from home, that's a lower exposure too. Some states have, compared to employees that are working at the office, which is 8810, there's a different class code for working from home. So if you have employees working from home, that's about half the rate of the working in the office. So keep track of any employees that are now working at home and submit those in to see if you can get some rate discounts there also. They're now saying too that they're going to have carriers pay for any employees that get sick through COVID-19. So that will be covered by the workers' comp in most cases, but it's not going to impact your experience modification rate, which is a good sign. So keep in mind with that. Another one is employer's liability. You know, if employees are saying that they got sick because you weren't providing them the safety PPEs that they need, keeping them the 6 feet distance, following all the CDC guidelines, that could fall onto Part B of your workers' comp policy, which is employer's liability, since you weren't taking the proper precautions with your employees. And now maybe they could all, put in a lawsuit on that towards your employer's liability. So make sure you have employer's liability on your policy, which you should, and then make sure also that you have if you're at a $500,000 coverage, increase that because the pricing is minimum to increase that to $1 million. And then you'd also want to make sure your umbrella is going over your employer's liability and your part of your workers' comp. So maybe you have a $5 million umbrella, so add that umbrella over it. So now you have the full $6 million in coverage.
Gotcha. Let me ask you this question. What's a mistake that contractors are making right now that you're seeing with some regularity as it pertains to workers' comp and COVID-19?
I think the biggest problem they're having is how do they keep their employees separated at 6 feet distance. I have some clients that are really proactive, that are really engaged in the risk management processes that I work with them through. And they call me and they ask me, what should I do? Because now I have employees. There was 2 or 3 guys in a truck going to work, but you can't be 6 feet apart in the truck. So now they're having their employees, 1 person per truck. If they don't have enough vehicles, their employees that aren't on the driver's list are driving their own vehicles to work. So one thing I tell them is first you need to make sure you have hired a non-owned auto to cover your employees driving their vehicles to work. That non-owned auto portion would cover that. And then also check all of your employees' insurance. You want to make sure their personal insurance is at least 100 and 300 in coverage. So if they do have an accident, they have enough coverage. That would be the minimum is the 100, 300 limits. So definitely make sure they're licensed. If they're licensed and not insured, don't let them drive to work, because if they have to go to one job site to another, and they have an accident, they are going to come after you as the employer.
Interesting.
And that's where your non-owned auto coverage would kick in if you have it. If you don't have it, you'd be paying that out of pocket.
So you should. What you're saying is, if you're an employer and somebody has employees and they're telling their employees, "Hey, you need to drive to the job site between job sites instead of using a company vehicle," then the employer should be collecting copies of driver's license and proofs of their personal auto insurance.
Yes, to protect them, they should definitely collect those, and they should review it, because if they have the state minimum, like in California, it's 15,000 per accident. I mean, 15,000 doesn't cover anything anymore. So you want to make sure that they have adequate limits, at least 100.
And what if they have the minimum? This may be going down the rabbit hole a little bit, but what if their insurance doesn't really meet a company's risk management? What if their coverage doesn't meet what the company really needs them to do?
That's where they got to decide, do they want to take on that exposure or not. I would recommend asking your employees to increase their coverage. And if they're not willing to, it's do you want them to work? Do you want to take on that exposure of them getting an accident and you being liable for it? So that's something where they're going to have to weigh what they want to do on that. But I would just protect them. It's best to get the 100, 300, make sure that they have that. And that's what most of the carriers would want to see too. They don't want just anybody driving their own autos for on the job.
So one more question on that. Let's say somebody is driving their personal vehicle to the job site. At what point does the person's driving become a company responsibility? If they have an accident on the way to work or on the way home from work, from the job site, is there a case to be made that that's the employer's responsibility?
I wouldn't rule out anything with lawyers, but usually in most cases, no. It's if once they're clocked out and they're driving to and from work, that is their own driving time. That's not the employer's responsibility. Let's say in a case where they all go to the office and they meet and then they drive to work, they all follow each other, they go to work from the office. If they're going into the office, make sure that you're not telling them, you're not talking to them about what they should be doing. There's nothing that job related, because once you start talking work, that's whenever officially they're on the clock. So if they were to say, hey, I was driving to work, I was working at that point, that's where you could be liable in the auto. And also wage and hour. If they say, the employer, we met at the office at 8, he didn't start paying me until 8:30 whenever I got to the job site. But while I was at the office, he told me to, clean up the office a little bit, and I wasn't paid. The lawyer gets involved. That's a huge wage and hour lawsuit when it happens. So you got to be really careful on how you handle the situation if you have them come to the office first. Otherwise, have them come to the job site, clock in when they get there.
Yeah, that's another compelling reason to have a time tracking system where people are clocking in when they get to the job site, clocking out. So you have a time stamp, and it's really hard for somebody to come back and say, hey, I was on the clock. Thought I was working, when there's a time stamped record that shows that they clocked out. And let's say they had an accident after that. Good advice. Good advice. What else? What else do we need to talk about when it comes to workers' comp, or what else are you seeing that construction business owners need to be aware of right now?
Just really, the main thing is, like we were saying, is track all of your expenses. The state fund in California, for example, has a couple of funds out right now for their clients, where if they have expenses for added expenses because they have to buy masks and hand sanitizer and all those different expenses that come along with the whole COVID-19 thing, they're giving relief to their clients. They have like a $25 million fund right now. So our clients that I have with State Fund are able to submit in their expenses and get some relief on that. So, talking to your broker, talking to your current carriers, if they're not communicating with you or being responsive, finding a broker that can communicate with the carriers for you. Because I know a lot of people don't realize that you can always change brokers. You don't have to move carriers. You can change brokers at any time. Bring in someone that that could be taking care of this for you and looking out for your best interest. Because right now is a time where, in my opinion, the good brokers are going to survive, and they're going to help their clients out a lot. And then there's a lot of brokers that are, they're not doing what they need to be doing, and their clients are going to realize that now is a time where there's a reason why you have to have a good broker and not just go direct to insurance carriers or work with someone that's not an expert in your industry. One other thing that I've been helping my clients with is if they have a learning management system, which I provide one to my clients, but some companies have their own that they get. Any of that training that they're doing online, say they have employees that are being paid and they're not working right now, they could be doing a few hours of training at home. That training that they're doing, they can apply that. Certain states are different. In California, they can get a refund on that training for construction. So all that training they're doing, they could be getting paid back through the state for. They could also be using that training. Say they did 400 courses over the last 2 months because they have 100 employees and they're doing 4 hours of training. That all that courses could be taken whenever they go out to market on the renewals, because I do expect the markets to start hardening and prices to go up. It's going to help with driving down the rates because they can show that they were using this time to be proactive and train their employees, whether it was on sexual harassment training that's required in some states, or ladder safety, wellness, HR. There's some COVID-19 training available now on how to. We uploaded some classes on how to be safe on the job site, wellness for COVID-19, and how to be safe when you're at the grocery store, things like that. So there's a lot of different training available. And right now is a perfect time where you have slow employees or employees not working at all, where they could be using that time to train and get those things done that you keep putting off because you're so busy. You're so busy focusing on getting new business and not really building your business.
Good advice. Good advice. One last question for you is related to a question. What is the number one question, like word for word, that you would advise a contractor to pick up their phone and ask their insurance broker as soon as they get done listening to this podcast?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I think if you're hearing this and you haven't heard at least some of this information from your broker, whether it's through emails they're sending out to you or them calling you to check in, if you haven't heard from them at all since COVID-19 happened and our world is changing and there's a lot of changes going on in the insurance world, they haven't talked to you about claims. What are your options on the claims? Do they think it's going to be covered, not covered? All that stuff. I would recommend, if you have another backup broker that you've been talking to for years that does educate you a lot, give them an opportunity. Call me, call someone that that knows the answers and that can help you out and that can help you impact your bottom line and improve your cash flow right now, because there's a lot of changes that can be made, but it's not your job to know those changes. Your broker should be letting you know about that.
Good stuff. So just to recap, a few highlights. I took down a few action items, if you will. Number one, call your broker and find out what's going on. If you haven't heard from your broker, then it's probably a good time to take your business out to market and shop it and get some different proposals. There's an opportunity to get money back on overpayments and errors and class codes on your workers' comp policies. There are, I know, Jeff, you help your clients with that. We definitely get a timesheet tracking system in place. Could be one of the biggest ROIs available. You can save money on workers' comp. You can save money on, it can cover your risk. It can, in my opinion, it pays for itself over and over and over. It's probably a good time to do a midterm audit on your liability policies, especially if your revenues are going to go down. And it's also a good time to make sure that your people that are working from home are being classified properly and you're paying the right amount of workers' comp for them. And if there are people who are in the field previously, but they're spending time in the office doing clerical work or working from home, you can save some money there. You don't want to overpay for that.
Yeah. The one other thing I don't know if we touched on is if they are working or they're being paid but they're not working, keep track of those numbers because those will be eliminated from the workers' comp. So they won't have to pay workers' comp on that at all because they're not working. There's no exposure. They're just being paid. So those payrolls can be removed.
Interesting. Okay.
That's something that's being passed right now and it should be passed. So it's just something to keep track of and just track it now. So whenever you have the audits, you can submit that info in.
Yeah. So set up a labor item or a cost code for people that are getting paid but not working. They're just on the clock. Yeah. Good advice. Great stuff. This has the opportunity to save people thousands of dollars going forward, put some cash in their pocket from overpayments, and really position them to optimize their overhead. So I appreciate it, Jeff.
If any of your listeners would like a free audit, me and my team would be happy to do one for them. 9 out of 10 times we can find some errors and get them some money back. And there's different ways we can go. We're not like the third-party auditors where we charge you a fee to do it. So, we can do it, and then we can discuss them becoming our client, or if they want to just stay with their current broker, we could just put a little fee just to out of what we return to them. Maybe 10% goes back to us, something like that. But usually, most people, once they find the errors and that what we can do, they want to work with us anyway. So it's usually no cost to them at all.
Yeah, that's a very generous offer. I appreciate that. And if people want to connect with you, whether it's follow you on social media, call you, or connect with you to take advantage of the free audit, where should they go?
My LinkedIn page is my most active. My profile kind of explains my whole process and what I do and how it's different in the industry. Go to Jeff Heet on LinkedIn.com. That's JEFF. The last name's Heet, Heet. My email's jeff.heet@ioausa.com. And our website's ioausa.com, and just look up my name for my profile on there. So connect with me any way you want. I'll get back to you. I'm happy to do any reviews, free advice. I don't expect anything in return. I'm always happy to help.
And if Jeff saves you hundreds of thousands of dollars, then if you feel the need to reciprocate and you're listening, then you can send me a check and I will scratch that itch for you. But no, great stuff, Jeff. I appreciate it. And I'll have those links in the show notes as well. So whatever you're listening to this on, look in the show notes for this episode and it'll be in there. So great stuff. Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Todd. Have a great day.
As soon as you get off this podcast, I recommend you contact your accountant, ask those questions, contact your insurance agent, and challenge them with the things we talked about. You probably want to contact Jeff directly and take him up on his offer to audit your policy and see what you can do to generate that economic stimulus package that we talked about. Also, check out constructionleadingedge.com/Tsheets to check out the Tsheets digital time tracking app. And check out the show notes on your podcast player for the other links that we talked about. And hope you got something out of this. I appreciate the ratings and the reviews. If you could take a moment and leave a rating and or a review on the podcast player of your choice, that helps get the word out there. And if you could share this podcast with somebody who needs to hear it, who could use their own economic stimulus package, or if they're just passionate about leadership in the construction business, that would be great. And my name is Todd DeWalt from constructionleadingedge.com. If I can help you eliminate profit bleeds in your business, put systems in place. If you're a construction business owner, go to constructionleadingedge.com. Click on the red button that says schedule a free call, and you and I will get on the phone. We'll talk about your biggest roadblocks and help you start mapping out a strategy to get around those things. Thank you so much for listening. As always, my name is Todd DeWalt. I will see you next time.